the Prices, Tina, Terry. Rick May's surgery went well. They managed to open, and they originally they was going to work on two, but then they only worked on one and got it opened up. And the doctor, I was there when the doctor was talking to the family. By family invite, I was there. And he said that they've only had the technology or the medicine or whatever in the past 2 or 3 years that they could even do what they did, because the artery that they worked on had been 100% blocked for 7 years. So medicine has come a long way, and we're thankful for all of that. I was talking to Brother Stabler this morning, and they finally diagnosed his problems and have given him some shots to try to alleviate his pain. And if he don't like what I'm telling you, he can throw something at me, but it's been diagnosed as arthritis and bone spurs in his knees. So let's make sure we keep him and also Peggy in our prayers, because she has some similar issues to deal with. Angel told me this morning that Tim is on his way to Birmingham. Brother Randy, that had been put in the hospital Friday, was having extreme difficulty breathing this morning, and doctors have been called in, so we don't know exactly what's going on there, but we need to keep that family in our thoughts and prayers. Anybody that we have overlooked? Lisa is going back Tuesday to her doctor, so let's keep her and the doctors in our prayers. Sister Fuller is home today. She's preparing for a test tomorrow, and let's leave it at that. So, pardon? In Birmingham. So let's pray for them to have a safe trip, and also that all goes well with the test. Anybody that I have overlooked? Okay. Brother Stabler, would you lead us in a prayer, please? The Youth Devo is here tonight. If you have not done whatever you was planning on doing with drinks or snacks or whatever, make sure you get those up here in time. If it's drinks, get them as soon as you can, to get them in the cooler so they can be cooling down. And also come and support the youth activity here. There's nothing else, we will start our Sunday school class, and then we're in 1 Samuel, and we will be at chapter 22. 1 Samuel chapter 22. Anytime you have a question or comment, just jump right in. If you recall, in chapter 21, where we are at this point is Saul is after David, and we'll leave it at that and start with verse 1 of 22. David therefore departed thence and escaped to the cave of Adullam, and when his brethren and all his father's house heard it, they went down thither to him. Now, this verse makes me think a little bit, and I want to try to think about the picture as a whole. Saul the king is after David. Saul the king has told all and put the word out that David is on the, I guess you could call it, the top 10 most wanted list. Everybody's legal to kill him or bring him to Saul for a killing. So, how does it work that so many people are helping David? Because everywhere he goes, he seems to be received and sheltered and helped, knowing that they're violating the king's laws. Here, even it gets down to the family knowing where he is, and they've gone to find him. So, how's that working? We all know that Saul is paranoid, and everything that happens just seems to build on that, increases paranoia, because every time he turns around, it seems like somebody else is taking the side of David and not trying to help him out. So to me, that's the big picture, that David's on the run. Saul has put the word out to kill him, but everybody's helping David, and it appears as nobody's on the move to help Saul. Verse 2, and everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented, gathered themselves unto him, and he became captain over them, and there were with him about 400 men. So if you just read this verse and look at where these people came from, what would you consider these 400 people to be? Were they the nobles of the country? Or the common folks, the down and out folks? And here I have read commentaries that want to make them out to be thieves and murderers, and even some of that group. But there's nothing here that says that. It just basically points out that they're the common people that's sort of rallying around. Because if you look at it down the road in the long run, if they had come from the very bottom of society, if they were the thieves and all, when they got around David, there's no indication and that they did any of that. They just got with David, and he was their captain, and they're not out pillaging and thieving and carrying on. So it looks like the common folks are sort of rallying around David at that point, and there's about 400 men. Well, the scripture sometimes is kind of vague in this area, but if there's 400 men, are there any women around taking care of 400 men? Do wives travel with their husbands and sisters and things of that nature? And the answer is most of the time, yes. Even the Roman army, when the Roman army was on the move, families would travel with them. Christ, when we get to the New Testament, when Christ is making all his travels, it talks about the disciples and the others following him. But if you read into it, where the ones that were around the cross, and at other times you can read into it, where that there seemed to be a following of women that would go and prepare the food and serve and help take care of them. So in this gathering there's more than just the 400 people. Well, I'm not sure that they know of his mental condition. I would say that they know that Saul is the king and after him. And I believe personally at this point that they at least know that the Lord is on David's side. So I would think that would be true. And whether or not they drew the conclusion that he was mentally unbalanced or not, I can't say, but all the indications are there that they could have drawn that conclusion. As we get down to the end of the chapter, I think it's even more evident when he gives the order to kill the priest, and they rebel against him, and then they have to call in an Edomite to do the job. We'll get to that at the end of the chapter, but I believe all along there's evidence that people are pretty aware of Saul's condition. Verse 3, David went thence to Mizpah of Moab, and he said unto the king of Moab, Let my father and my mother, I pray thee, come forth and be with you till I know what God will do for me. Now, is Moab a friendly country to the Israelites? Not generally. Brother Golden. Correct. Correct. But in general, the Moabites, the Edomites, they've all had conflict. Saul has even fought them and such, even the Edomites. But we'll, like I say, we'll get there later. But he goes in and asked the king of Moab to let his folks stay there. Was that a wise decision, and why did he do it? If Saul is after him, is his family safe? No. So David is protecting his family by doing this. Verse 4, he brought them before the king of Moab, and they dwelt with him all the while that David was in the hole. Now, today, when we think of hole, what do we think it to be? Okay, it is a stronghold, but if we were to say somebody's in the hole today, what are we making it at? You was in the Navy. If somebody had to go to the hole, what were they talking about? You was never there. Prisoner, captive is where I was going with that. But what this word really means is he was in the stronghold. In other words, they had a fortified place of some type, so that he was in the stronghold and not in captivity at this point. Verse 5, the prophet Gad said unto David, Abide not in the hole, depart and get into the land of Judah. Then David departed and came into the forest of Hareth. But backing up to the previous verse there, till I know what God will do for me. Does that phrase seem kind of odd at this point? David was a strong believer in God. Remember when he fought the giant Goliath? What was his comment there? God. Now, God's on his side. So why would he make this comment here? What's God going to do for me now? Okay. Okay. But hasn't Samuel already talked to him and told him he was the chosen one? Hadn't he already been anointed? And David believing in God, why would he question what God was going to do for him at this time? Pardon? Okay, I might be looking at this a little bit from off center. So if I am, let me know. But because of what he's doing here and who he's talking to in Moab, and he's taking care of his family, I sort of take it to be that I want my family in a safe place until I find out what process is going to take place. I think he was trying to look out more for family and was concerned at this point for their well-being more than he was concerned about exactly what was going to happen to him. Does that sound reasonable, or is that too far off the bubble there? Well, the King James says for me. Okay, so I think we're all on the same page. David, it feels secure in what is going on. He's just, yeah. I think today's terminology, we might say something to the effect of, if you was trying to take care of your family, well, you stay here until I find out how this plays out. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. So verse 5, after the prophet Gad, David had departed, went into the forest of Hareth. When Saul heard that David was discovered and the men that were with him, Saul abode in Gibeah under a tree in Ramah, having his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing about him. All his servants about him, I'm not so sure, but what right now they're not talking about. He has called sort of a conference together, because the next two verses take us into a small speech that Saul is about to make. So all his men are around him. He's got his spear in his hand. He loves that javelin. Verse 7, then Saul said unto his servants that stood about him, hear now, ye Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? I'm going to pause right there. The second verse is continuing that little speech. But what is Saul trying to do to the men at this point? Pardon? Doubt, bribery, because he's saying, hey, what have I done for you versus what's he going to do for you? And then verse 8, the first part of that says, that all of you have conspired against me. Have all of them conspired against him? Not all of them. They're with him at this point. But what happens when somebody gets into the area of paranoia? Everybody's out against me. Everybody. Then it says, and there is none that showeth me that my son hath made a league with the son of Jesse, and there is none of you that is sorry for me, or showeth unto me that my son hath stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait as at this day. So he knows his son has taken care of David to a point. None of his servants, none of his group has told him about it. He had to discover it himself. So this just, again, builds on that anxiety that he has. And then verse 9, it said, then answered Doeg the Edomite, which was set over the servants of Saul, and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahemelec, the son of Ahitub. Okay. Why hadn't he spoken before this? If he saw him and knew that the word was out, why hadn't he put that word in Saul's ear? So at least at this point, it seems like everybody knew that Saul didn't have a good reason to go after David, and they wasn't going to help Saul take care of the situation. Verse 10, he inquired of the Lord for him and gave him food and gave him the sword of Goliath. Well, let's back up. Who is Ahemelec, the son of Ahitub? Priest. Right. Correct. But Ahimelech is the priest that David had gone to in the temple and got the showbread to eat and the sword, the equipment. So that catches us up to where we are. And so Doeg is just relating the story to Saul of who David had been to and what had transpired when he says that he is at Nob and they gave him all this stuff. Or then the king sent to call Ahemelec the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests that were in Nob, and they came out all of them to the king. So at this point, at least, Saul knows that David had some help. Ahimelech had given him food, given him weapons. And then Saul says, "Hear now, thou son of Ahitub." And he answered, Here I am, my lord. And Saul said unto him, "Why have ye conspired against me, thou and the son of Jesse, in that thou hast given him bread and a sword, and hast inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me to lie in wait as at this day?" Let's separate that a little bit. When David went to Ahimelech, the priest, what did David tell him? Lies. He told him he was on the king's mission, a secret mission, that he had to leave so fast that he didn't even have time to take his weapons with him. So when Ahimelech gave him bread and equipment, he was clueless as to the real reason that David was there. But Saul takes it on that since he was helped in that manner, that there was a conspiracy against him. That conspiracy comes from his attitude that we have discussed, and it seems like his son had helped David, and he found that out. Others had not told him where David was, so you can see how everything is starting to build where Saul could possibly have this attitude. But then Ahimelech answered the king and said, "And who is so faithful among all thy servants as David, which is the king's son-in-law, and goeth at thy bidding, and is honorable in thine house?" So apparently Ahimelech didn't try to defend himself, because he didn't say, "I didn't know." He's calling out Saul and pointing out the good points of David. Did Ahimelech tell Saul anything that was not true? No. David was his son-in-law. David was the honorable person. David was at Saul's beck and call. But then in verse 15, "Did I then begin to inquire of God for him? Be it far from me, let not the king impute anything unto his servant, nor to all the house of my father, for thy servant knew nothing of all this, less or more." So now he sort of tries to defend himself. He put David first, and then he said, "I didn't know anything." If somebody is a little off their rocker, is that going to make a difference? It certainly didn't here, did it? Because Saul comes back, and the king said unto the footmen that stood about him, "Turn and slay the priest of the Lord, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he fled, and did not show it to me." Again, David had lied to him, but here, Saul don't care. Saul is so intent on doing away with David that he's going to take care of anything in his way or anything between he and David. But here the servants of the king would not put forth their hand to fall upon the priest of the Lord. Why do you think that is? Okay. In this situation, where did a priest fall in in the hierarchy or in the lineup, so to speak. In some respects, he was above the king because the priests were next to God. The priest took care of God's calling, and for those that believed, the true believing Israelite, God, the priest, was more important than the king. So here, the man said, not going to do it. And the king said unto Doeg, turn thou and fall upon the priest. And Doeg the Edomite turned, and he fell upon the priest, and slew on that day 75 persons that did wear a linen ephod. Remember now, they had sent to Nob, which was one of the temple areas where all the priests were, had all of them come. So here, 75 is how many people? 85 people that wore the ephod, meaning priest. Why do you think Doeg would do that when the others would not? No. Who were the Edomites? Edomites were descendants of Esau, which come down, and when the Israelites left Egypt on their journey and had to travel on basically the King's Highway through Edom, were they allowed to go through Edom? So there had been that friction all along the way. And like I said, Saul had even fought the Edomites, but here you've got basically a traitor of the Edomites, Doeg, there. So Doeg, the Edomites were also not, they didn't hold the priest in high esteem. They were, they worshiped pagan rituals and things of that nature. So Doeg was the natural person to go to if you wanted to do in doing the priest. And here he killed 85 of them that day. Nob, the city of priests, smote he with the edge of the sword both men and women, children, sucklings, oxen, asses, sheep, with the edge of the sword. We've mentioned this before, but why did he kill the women and the children and the animals when Saul had instructed him to kill the priest? What in this time period, why were family members killed? So nobody could come back and retaliate, because remember, at this particular time in history, if I were alive and had a brother and somebody killed my brother, I was next in line. I was legal to go kill that person. Didn't have to, but I was legal to do so. So here, if you just wipe out everybody that's close, then they can't come back and retaliate. But let's look at verse 20. Questions, comments? Okay. Starting at verse 20. One of the sons of Ahemelec, the son of Ahitub, named Abba Thor, escaped and fled after David. Somebody go to the next chapter, chapter 23, and look at verse 6. 23 and verse 6, and read that. Okay, so what we're looking at here in verse 20 only says he escaped and fled to David, but the verse 6 there in the following chapter says that he got there with an ephod. What is the importance of the ephod? Badge of the priest. So apparently when he fled, he took time to take his badge or grab something the symbol to take with him so that he could perform his duties if necessary. Verse 21, Abba Thor showed David that Saul had slain the Lord's priest. And David said unto Abba Thor, I knew it that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul. Okay, so David had seen Doeg there when Doeg had seen him, and then went back and told Saul what was going on. And David had at least the suspicion that because of who he was and where he was from, that he would be the one that would, again, in our parlance today, rat him out, bat him out, or snitch on him, let him know what was going on. And all that came to be. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to this next part of the sentence there. David is saying, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of thy father's house. He is talking to Abba Thor, whose father and family had just been killed by Doeg, and he says, I am responsible for their death. How was he responsible, or why did he think he was responsible? I'm sorry? Okay, he lied to Ahemelec, that's one. Okay. Okay. I want to put a little food for thought in here for you just a minute. If you're on the run and you see somebody that you think will snitch you out and you don't do something to them, could you not also feel responsible? If he had seen Doeg and had had the opportunity to take care of the situation at that point, remember the Edomites and the Israelites wasn't friendly to start with. But if you're on the run and you see somebody that's going to turn you in, why did David not take care of Doeg at that point? Could that not also make him feel responsible? Pardon? Not saying that's why he felt the way he did. He might not have had the opportunity. He might have seen him at a distance and couldn't do anything about it. But and he could have had a band of people around him. So you don't know that. I'm just wanting to stir the pot a little bit, get you thinking. And then verse 23, it appears to me as though he's trying to sort of make amends with him when he says, abide thou with me, fear not, for he that seeketh my life seeketh thy life, but with me thou shalt be in safeguard. I think there's a couple of things in this verse. One, Saul has already had his whole family of priests killed. So it's not a surprise that if he had opportunity, he would kill him. He's not only on the lookout for David, he's on the watch for him also. But then the second part of it is when David said, you stay with me, you will be in safeguard. What does safeguard mean? Protection? Okay. Again, let's go back and look at the culture of the time. We've gone through this 2 or 3 times, but we'll just put it in perspective again. If I lived at that time and I had a house and I invited you into my house, I am supposed to protect you. Remember what happened to Lot in Sodom, Gomorrah? Uh, how that they offered the daughters instead of the men because they were under their protective care. So here, even though David is sort of at this point a wanderer, he's just going from safe place to safe place. He basically is telling this fella, Abba Thor, you stay with me, I will die for you. I put my life before yours. And that's what safeguard really means. Uh, the people that guard the President of the United States, what is their number one mission? Their only mission? Keep the President alive. You will take a hit for him. You'll put yourself between him and danger. I think this is the same situation that David is telling Abba Thor here. They don't get to you unless they come through me. And I believe that's what that's all about. So all of verse 22 then is dealing with, it's basically broken up into two parts. If you look at we've already gone through the whole chapter, but if you want to dissect the chapter, if you go verses 1 through 5, it is showing David on the move. David is fleeing. And then 6 through the rest of the chapter is dealing with Saul killing the priest, building up to the reasons and killing the priest. And then in the end there, one of them got away and went to David. Questions or comments on chapter 22? Questions or comments on anything in the book of Saul, book of 1 Samuel so far? Okay. Got about 5 minutes, so we're going to start with chapter 23. Then they told David, saying, behold, the Philistines fight against Keilah, and they robbed the threshing floors. Who again were the Philistines? One of the favorite enemies of the Israelites. They were always in a little battle. Where did Goliath come from? What group was he with? Fighting for it? Philistines. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go and smite these Philistines? And the Lord said unto David, go and smite the Philistines and save Keilah. And David's men said unto him, behold, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more than if we come to Keilah against the enemies of the Philistines? Then David inquired of the Lord yet again, and the Lord answered him and said, arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into thy hand. So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines and brought away their cattle and smote them with great slaughter. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. If you noticed in there, I caught myself doing it. I said, Philistine and Philistine. I've called them two different things in the reading. That's because I don't know what to call them, and I just read, and whatever comes to mind I say. But here David inquired of God what he should do. 2 points. Why were the men afraid where they were? Who was Saul after? Saul and his army was after David and was going to take care of whoever was helping David. So they had a right to fear because there might be a fight go on. However, it's one thing to be afraid or fear or concerned about something that might happen versus something that's going to happen. And if they are going to go to Keilah, they know that they're going into battle. You take a serviceman, they could be in the theater of war, and they could be in their shelter, and they've got a little bit of breathing space, and they don't think about constantly the danger that might be coming on them. It'll come to them occasionally, but when they fall back from the front lines and doing a little R&R, even though they're in potential danger, they've still got they got some breathing room. But when it comes time for them to go back to the front line or engage the enemy, what do you think happens to their mental state? So here they're afraid where they are, but they know going down to Keilah that they're going to go into battle, and some of them might be killed. So that's why David went back the second time and inquired of the Lord what was going to be. And then how did God answer him? You go, I take care of the situation. Every time that people rely on God, God takes care of the situation. Sometimes not the way we ask for it to be taken care of, but he's in charge. So verse 6, and it came to pass when Abba Thor, the son of Ahemelec, fled to David to Keilah, that he came down with an ephod in his hand. That's one we just read. And it was told Saul that David was come to Keilah, and Saul said, God hath delivered him into mine hand, for he is shut in by entering into a town that hath gates and bars. Okay. Again, if we look back at all the cities of that time, I'm not talking about the little outlying settlements, but the major cities, all of them were fortified in one sense or another. Walls, gates, some of them even had it where the only way in or out after the gate was closed was up and down in baskets, even to shuttle food in. So apparently Keilah is a stronghold, a real stronghold. So Saul thinks that, well, let him go, because now I've got him trapped. Verse 8, Saul called all the people together to war to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. And David knew that Saul secretly practiced mischief against him. And he said to Abba Thor, a priest, bring hither the ephod. Then said David, O Lord God of Israel, thy servant hath certainly heard that Saul seeketh to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Here again, David is thinking, even though he is going to save somebody, that by going there, he is putting that whole city in danger, because who's Saul coming after? David. So no matter where he is, in protective custody or in danger fighting an enemy, Saul is going to do whatever's necessary. Verse 11 then says, will the men of Keilah deliver me up into his hand? Will Saul come down as thy servant hath heard? O Lord God of Israel, I beseech thee, tell thy servant. And the Lord said, he will come down. So David is going to go to Keilah. He's going to fight to save the people. And he also knows that now Saul is coming and looking for him. Brother Terry can either pick up here or back up a little bit and cover this Wednesday night. So thank y'all for your comments and your attention.